今日は新しい手もみ麺ですね。もう見たからに美味しそうな麺です。
Ramen to me is life. For 4 decades as a family business, we've been crafting traditional Japanese ramen noodles. We do about 100,000 pounds of noodles, which equates about 300,000 portions per day. And we serve hundreds of restaurants and ramen shops throughout the country. I think in New York City, there's about 150 ramen shops. We're fortunate to supply about 70 to 80% of them. Right now, we're receiving our flour from Canada. Every week, we bring in about 800 bags, 50-pound bags of flour. When we look at a diagram of making noodles, we have elastic, non-elastic, we have chewy, and then we also have soft. And so based on those, where the chef is looking for, we will just kind of manipulate and really figure out a recipe that will get to that product that they're looking in that bowl of ramen. And we work very closely with our suppliers in terms of finding the right wheat flour, how to mill it. We have here what we call the Go flour, which is our primary flour for ramen noodles. It's about 12% in protein. The ash content is about 0.2, which means it's very, very white in color. This is a very specific flour from Australia. Australia is known for its soft, chewy kind of texture of a flour that I think world-renowned when you make udon. And then we also have one here that's a higher protein flour from Canada. All the flours that we use, they all have a purpose. We'll blend different styles of wheat so that we're able to kind of capture what that chef is looking for. In Japan, people will eat ramen within 10-15 minutes. Here in the States, I think the average is like 45 minutes. Can you create a noodle that will keep its texture longer in the soup? We will use things like gluten or tapioca starch to create that texture for them. And this is our temomi noodle that my dad created many, many years ago. This is the start of making noodles. The second ingredient is what we call kansi, and kansi is sodium carbonate and potassium carbonate. It essentially makes the water solution higher alkaline. What you get from kansi is a very strong texture. If you don't put kansi, it wouldn't be considered a ramen noodle. So this is where we have our water tanks. All of our factories, we have a reverse osmosis water system. That water is cooled to a very, very low temperature. Then you're able to gradually produce a better noodle. We're kind of going from a very hard water that's more than 100 parts per million. And what we then get pumped into these tanks is less than 10 parts per million. It's a very soft water, no minerals. So we start with a very cold, clean water. Where we get the color for our noodles is riboflavin, which is vitamin B2. And he's gonna add the kansi and also the salt. So in this process, he's taking all the wet solution and he's gonna put it in this tank here. It'll be sprayed on the flour as it's mixing. The goal is to try to get each particle of flour and water to incorporate. This is what we call, in Japanese, soboro, and soboro means dough balls. And my grandfather would always say is aim for like a rice strain. That means you've incorporated the solution of the water and the flour evenly. Wheat flour has 2 proteins called gliadin and glutenin. And so when you mix those 2 proteins with water, gluten naturally develops. And that's what makes these amazing noodles have that nice texture. Now that the mixing is done, we're gonna drop it downstairs for the sheeting process. If you don't properly develop gluten, your noodles get soggy very quick. You might have more of a fluffy, kind of airy texture. Gluten will create that bounce, that nice chew. If you can picture like a gluten network that's like a web, we're trying to multiply them more and more as we mix them. If you overmix it, or if the temperature's too hot, you'll start to break the gluten. And so there's a fine balance between just enough mixing and too much mixing. We'll get all those dough balls and we're gonna put them through massive amounts of pressure through these rollers to then create what we call mentai. Mentai means noodle sheets. Laminating 2 really strongly developed gluten networks on sheets and then putting them together into one. You'll be able to create more texture and balance. Depending on the prefecture or the parts of Japan that you're at, you'll have different varieties of ramen available. So early on, my father would travel from northern Japan and make his way all the way down, eating and learning different prefecture ramen noodles. And that's why today at Sun Noodle, we're very confident in making about 200 varieties. We're making this morning very southern Kyushu style noodle, which is famous for tonkotsu, pork ramen. The traditional noodles in southern Japan is white, very thin. It's very brittle, so it's not as chewy, it's more crunchy. After we create these noodle sheets, we will wrap them. We're going to prevent the noodle sheets from drying out. We're going to let these rest. And in Japanese, we call it nekasu. Nekasu means to like sleep. The gluten network has already been built. By letting it rest, it's going to get stronger. After we've rested the dough sheets for about 45 minutes or more, we'll put them in this machine. We start at about 8 millimeters, press them slowly until we get to our final thickness that we're going to look for. The thickness is so crucial because it'll affect your cooking time, it'll affect the texture, it'll affect how it balances with the soup. And so this is a very important tool. The noodle sheets will go through these cutters and they have numbers. And this is a number 8 cutter, 8 strands of noodles within 30 millimeters. These rubber blades here will have a resistance to it. And so when the noodle sheet comes through, when it hits these rubber, it makes a waviness. And that's how we get the curl of a ramen noodle. And we can adjust the tension. We can make it wavier by making it harder. Only a few people in this factory can touch the cutters because it's so meticulous in how you set it up. And so these cutters we get from Japan, where there's a company that's been making cutters for hundreds of years. My father is from the prefecture of Tochigi, which is known for their Sano-style ramen. And they'll use the bamboo poles to kind of spread the noodle sheets out, and then they'll cut them and then hand massage it. So temomi noodles, essentially in Japanese, te is hand and momi is noodles. It's something that my dad made 30, 40 years ago, and it's something that my sister and I grew up eating. Now back in the day, my dad would hand massage it by himself. Now this noodle is by far our best seller. And so we've automated that process here, and it'll go through these rollers to take that first step of massaging it. We have it pre-portioned and pre-cut, and it goes through another kind of massaging process here. It looks hand massage, it feels like it's hand massage, and so when the chef gets it, you have random kind of thick, thin parts, or wavy, straight, and so it's a really fun noodle. So Sun Noodle started in Hawaii by my father and my mother in 1981. When he was 19, every single day he would make noodles, and he was able to connect, and slowly he would get the respect and the support of the chefs and restaurants. That's really the start of where we come from. Every day on the production floor, we pull noodles as retention samples. This one goes specifically for Ivan Ramen in New York City. This one goes to Yuji Ramen, Okonomi in Brooklyn. We always have 2 samples. One is we're going to test for microbiological stuff. The other portion will go to our QC team. We taste these every morning. So this one is called kezuri. This one is the temomi noodles. And this is the high fiber noodles. Usually what we would have is a chef that's going to come and visit. We'll kind of bring out a bunch of noodles and see what works best for that restaurant. I think chefs come and look to Sun Noodle for direction, and the R&D team, they're going to just really test different flours, different ingredients to then get close to what the chef is looking for. We take a lot of pride and responsibility to kind of show them what is basic traditional styles of ramen. We learn to always slurp, right? So I grew up eating miso ramen. Our dad would take us to visit a client of his every Sunday, so this is very nostalgic. We've developed these ramen kits that you can buy at retailers and grocery stores. We work with some of these chefs and restaurants, create these collaborative ramen kits so that people all over can have the experience of that ramen shop in their own kitchens. After it's being packaged, it goes through a metal detector to make sure that there's no foreign materials in the bags. And then it goes through a weight checker. Contrary to maybe what most people think, eating it right away is not the best. We encourage restaurants to at least wait 24 hours. That will then further develop the gluten and let it rest. After we put it in the bags, we'll put it in boxes, and then we'll temper them in the refrigerator for 24 hours.
We deliver daily to restaurants. We're anywhere from 20 to about 40 restaurants, depending on the day. Some of the restaurants that we work with in New York City include Momofuku, Ivan Ramen, probably are the more famous. Not to mention Momo-san. But we work with a lot of different ramen shops. It could be anywhere from about 200 cases all the way up to about 500 cases per day.
2010, I was invited to an event in New York. When I came out here, the reputation of Sun Noodle was so bad. The products were not handled properly. That's when I asked my father if I could come out here and try to rebuild kind of the image, just the way that he started in Hawaii. So I came out here in 2012. As I was knocking on doors, there was one that I just loved eating at, and it was called Minka Ramen. Mr. Kamado would always come to his restaurant at 9:30 in the morning on his bicycle. By 9, I'm always there with a fresh set of samples. He had some really critical things to say about the product. We would reformulate and call California, and the next day they'll FedEx me samples. And after about 14, 15 tries, he finally took the product, and it's on the menu today.
毎週火曜日と木曜日に、ヌードルが来ます。今日は新しい手もみ麺ですね。すごくいい人間なのは初めから分かってヤングでそんですごくスマイルが良くて何回もねトライしてくれて First time tasted too light and he tried more something secret things better and better maybe 10 times after so be perfect 今から、スパイシー味噌ラーメンキムチ入りのスパイシー味噌ラーメンを作りますポークブロスチキンブロスを8オンスそれにホームメイドの味噌ですホームメイドの味噌を入れますじゃあヌードルを茹でますここのオープンしたのは2004 2004年です僕が 1970s の頃に東京でしょっちゅうラーメン食べてたんでそれをもう一回ニューヨークに行ってでもどこにもそれないから自分でもう作るしかないなと思ってはいではこれがスパイシー味噌ラーメンキムチバージョンです20年か30年ぐらいうちでねたまに作ってはこれ違うかなって思いながら作ってて一つには自分のメモリーのねジャパンのメモリーがいつもね頭の中にテイストあるわけ味がこれ醤油だれ This is pork broth This is chicken broth 始めた時は豚骨ラーメンを作って出したらもうみんなびっくりしてこれ何なのって言うからいやこれがラーメンですよっていう言っておーって感じになってそれでもうリピートしてくれたりとかして This is fish powder pork chashu This is bamboo This is mushroom はい醤油豚骨このヌードルも割と、東京の古いヌードルスタイルに近いんで
He's one of the first customers to see me and give me a chance to grow this business. He's taught me a lot about what it means to get the trust of a restaurant owner and a chef. Today we work with the vast majority of ramen shops in New York City. Ramen to me is life. You still remember those memories of what it was like growing up every Sunday eating ramen. It's just amazing to see that an experience of eating something so delicious from our dad's hometown and households of many more Americans. The values of Sun Noodle is based off of what my parents learned in Hawaii. He's always said, Ken, we make really great noodles and we take pride in that, but the one thing that we should always strive for is developing people. Like the ohana, the family in Hawaiian. This company today employs 300 people across the 4 locations. A lot of them have worked here for years and years. I think that makes him the most proud. is seeing the development of our ohana.